quick question, Professor. The first one has to do with the mainstream press wanting to look at this new book by Hugh Pearson called Shadow of the Panther, talking about the vice and corruption of the Black Panther Party movement. There is no talk of the Chicago police and police around the country going after the Panthers and the FBI. I would like to know if you can comment on that. And second, the Urban League has put forth a new platform along the lines of bootstrap capitalism, liberty Washington nonsense.
I'm sorry, Ken. I didn't hear the last part.
Bootstrap capitalism, saying that we have to do the kind of things that Farrakhan talks about, take care of our own, get into businesses. Do you think the way to success and black emancipation is for black people to become the heads of IBM and General Motors? Thank you.
Well, on the first part, that's an old story. Actually, I had a lot of personal experience with that, it turns out. I was with a group that was a resistance sport group that was maybe the first white group or one of the first white groups to get involved with the Panthers back in the 60s, just when they were getting started. And so I had a lot of personal experience. Actually, I was at Fred Hampton's funeral, the guy who was murdered in Chicago, one of the very few white faces there, in fact. But what you describe, I mean, what you allude to, Tom described, is exactly right. I mean, the Panthers were they were an important. There weren't a lot of people. They have big publicity, but not many people. By now, we have a ton of IBF stuff, FBI stuff on them, and according to the FBI, there were about 800 members, and they were, the FBI devoted huge resources to destroying them, because these 800 people might actually do something, and the way they went after them was pretty selective. I mean, the Panthers, all you had to do was to just begin to have contacts with them. You could see right off it's a very diverse group. I mean, it involved everything from thugs and criminals who were using this as a kind of rip-off technique to very constructive and serious organizers. If you ask who survived, it's the thugs and criminals. The serious organizers were killed or eliminated in some fashion or other, and the extreme example is Fred Hampton, who you're referring to. I mean, Fred Hampton is a really important case in modern American history. This is a black organizer who the FBI tried to get assassinated very hard. The first way they did it, all the records are out on this. It's completely public. It's been public for 20 years. He was the most constructive and effective Panther organizer in the ghettos. No violence, no drugs, nothing. Just doing much worse things, organizing people. The way they tried to get at him at first was by working through a criminal gang. There was a criminal gang in Chicago ghetto called the Blackstone Rangers. Now, the security forces like the police and FBI, they don't have anything against criminal gangs. That's their part of the technique for controlling the ghetto, so they're okay. And the FBI was all involved with the Rangers, of course. They sent a letter it was kind of like comical, fake black dialect, written by some guy sitting in a Washington office, dear brother or something or other. I mean, it's comic. You've seen it, I'm sure. It's just comical to read, saying, that there's this guy, Fred Hampton, and he's taken out a contract on you, written to Jeff Ford or whoever it was who was the head of the Rangers. The idea was to try to get the Blackstone Rangers to assassinate Fred Hampton for him. Okay, the Rangers and the Panthers were already enough integrated with one another, so first of all, nobody in the black community could have believed this letter for a second, but secondly, they had good relations, and it didn't work. So the next thing the FBI did was simply set up a Gestapo-style assassination, literally. I mean, they managed to get an FBI infiltrator to be the Fred Hampton's main security guy. He and a bunch of other Panthers were living in an apartment. They sent the Chicago police a completely faked claim, the FBI report that these guys had guns and this and that and the other thing, and they got the police to break in at 4 o'clock in the morning and just murder him in bed, probably drugged. There was at first a kind of like a pretense that the Panthers had fired and this and that and the other thing, but that all blew apart. And they finally had to concede what was true. It was just a straight Gestapo-style assassination. Okay? I mean, of all the crimes in the Richard Nixon era, there isn't one domestic one. I mean, I'm forgetting the internationals. There's not one domestic one that even comes close to this. I mean, compared with this, Watergate isn't even a Tea Party. It doesn't even exist. But this is part of a program that goes way back. Goes back to the late 50s. Kennedy built it up a lot. Continued through Johnson, Nixon extended it. Technically, it's supposed to have terminated in 1975 when it was exposed, but nobody knows. It's just nobody's investigated since then. Well, okay, that's, and that's the selective, and the Panthers were destroyed. But it wasn't just the Panthers. I think the whole black community was just devastated. There were all sorts of things going on in the 60s, and they were treated kind of like the Haitian popular movement. I mean, they can kill 4,000 people because this is the United States, not Haiti, but similar. It's kind of like the similarity between death squads that murder children in Brazil and the way we take care of them here. It's, rich countries, you do it differently. But sometimes it went down to straight murder, like in the Hampton case. Well, okay, that's, no more Panthers.